this is Editor's Take. I'm Sakshi Batra and with me is Gaurav Choudhary, is the Deputy Executive Editor of Moneycontrol, and we are here to discuss about how the economy and policy will shape up under the Modi Sarkar 2.0. Thanks a lot, Gaurav, for joining in. Now, we do know that the historic mandate is being celebrated not just at the BJP headquarters, but even the global brokerage houses are saying that India is expected to do better under the second term of Modi government. But on the other hand, experts are also saying that the Herculean challenge in terms of economy awaits the Modi Sarkar 2.0. Would you agree?
There are a couple of things. One, we have to first find out when the government actually takes oath. But going by the approach of the government that has been visible over the last 5 years, I expect a flurry of activity in the first 100 days or so. And especially two events that we need to watch out for. One is the budget that is going to be presented in the first fortnight of July. And second, his first Independence Day speech in the current term, which is on the 15th of August from the ramparts of Red Fort. In 2014, he made a lot of announcements about policy changes, about institutional changes, and about institutional approach to many things that eventually were executed over the next 4 or 5 years. One of them, for instance, we know the decision to wind down the Planning Commission was announced during his first Independence Day speech on August 15, 2014, and eventually it led to the creation of Niti Aayog. I would expect the government to actually demonstrate its intent to walk the talk on two big things, the results of which will probably be very long drawn, and you do not expect immediate results, but the government will say that it is very serious about solving these problems or finding a lasting solution to these two problems. The first problem is agrarian distress. Oh yes. Agrarian distress is something that the government can ignore only at its own peril. And that's a real problem. Regardless of the historic mandate, the government, I would assume, would be aware that there is something that needs to be done on an urgent basis to raise rural income or farmers' income, to be more precise. And it's a peculiarity that the Indian farm sector is currently going through. They are producing in abundance, but their income is falling. That is something that needs to be addressed. So the infirmities in the farm sector will probably be addressed by focusing more on the marketing side of products, marketing side of the sector that is trying to get farmers closer to the markets, which will require some regulatory changes in the regulatory architecture, as well as dismantling of logistics barriers. And second, the government is probably likely to focus more on sectors that it thinks have greater multiplier effects in creating more jobs. In both of these, I expect the first budget, which is going to be presented in the first fortnight of July, to make some significant announcements. All right, so all eyes will be on the union budget, which will be presented in the first week of July, and that is expected to show how the government is going to move forward to come to the aid of the farm crisis, as well as to increase jobs, which it has been receiving a lot of flack for. But apart from this, we are in the mid of slowing growth. We are also seeing that consumption is faltering. So are the private investments as well, and we are also seeing anemic exports. So how will the government address all these concerns? Yeah, so the slowdown is here for real, and we'll get to know about what the extent of the slowdown and how it has permeated across the broader economy when the GDP data comes out for the last quarter on 31st of May, and that is one piece of data that the government will have to possibly, take it seriously, because it's only going to reinforce what experts have been saying based on some other proxy data like car sales data, corporate income data, etc., etc. Consumption clearly is slowing down, and if you go by these different matrices like car sales, which has reached a multi-year low, the Indian economic growth story primarily is founded on the edifice of consumption growth of households. So one of the surest way to turn around an economy or arrest a slide is to give more money in the hands of the people to spend. And how do you go about doing that? So one of the the way the government can do it, which will have an immediate effect, is to give them tax breaks. If you give individuals tax breaks, then they will have a lot of their disposable income will go up. And if the disposable income will go up, it's only fair to assume that a large part of that income they will spend while saving, setting aside some part of it as savings. So incremental rise in disposable income is something that the government will seriously look at. And I expect the direct taxes code, which a panel is looking into, to become a reality very soon. So a direct taxes code is aimed at distilling, coming out with a contemporary code, and which is going to replace in India's complex income tax code, which is dominated by multiple rates, multiple slabs, and also layers and layers of exemption. The whole idea is to replace this with a simpler, modern, contemporary code with fewer slabs, fewer exemptions, and easier to understand rules. Once that happens, we would expect individual income tax, individuals likely to get tax breaks, and the disposable income will go up. So if on an aggregate level, if thousands and thousands of people end up spending a significant part of the rise in incremental disposable income, that will lead to more sales of goods, which eventually could turn into greater investment.
Absolutely. So you did talk about the direct taxes, but I want you to also focus on the indirect taxes. In the first term of the Modi government, we did see one of the biggest taxation reforms in the indirect taxes space, the GST came about. But of late, we have been seeing the opposition clamor about simplification of GST. Yes. Do you think that in the second term, the government will be focusing on simplifying GST, as well as the liquidity crisis that has been, in the focus in the last 6 months, especially the NBFCs have been facing that. So all of that, is that going to be on the agenda?
Clearly, GST definitely, because they have made a promise in their manifesto that they are going to continue with the process of simplification of GST. So it's not a way of saying that they are going to actually hasten the process of simplification of GST, and it is something which even the Congress in its manifesto had said that they're going to launch something called GST 2.0. So the interesting thing here to watch out for is when does the new finance minister actually propose the first meeting of the GST Council in the current term.
Yes.
I expect that to happen sometime in the middle of June. And I would not be surprised if a fresh set of proposals are brought in to reduce tax rates on the remaining products which continue to remain in the 28% tax slab. And eventually, as we know, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley had said that we have to move towards a median rate. I expect a lot of activity on reducing the number of tax slabs in GST. Clearly, procedural simplification is something that the government will have to or the GST Council, which is the decision-making body in the GST system, will have to seriously look at. And I expect a lot of activity on that. On liquidity crisis, yes, that's a problem. And NBFCs is a major cog in the financing wheel of the Indian economy. The Indian economy cannot afford the crisis in the NBFC sector to persist. It's not just about NBFCs lending to individuals. NBFCs are lending to several important sectors which have a lot of investment multiplier effects as well as job creation effects, like the real estate sector, for instance. That is something that the new finance minister will have to immediately look into.
All right. Thanks a lot then, Gaurav, for sharing all that insight with us. Well, we can expect that the economic and strategic reforms that Modi government has been known for will get a fresh boost in the second term as well. But remember, the fisc also needs to be kept in check, and how soon will the government be able to rev up this slowing economy is something which only time will tell. Thanks a lot for joining us in this edition of Editor's Take, and do stay logged on to moneycontrol.com for more news and updates. Thanks for watching.